thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. Download the app today.
This is Up for a Chat with your hosts, Cindy O'Meara and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And I'm Kim Morrison. What an absolute delight it is for us to have the beautiful Rebekah Rocca with us this week. This beautiful mama bear. She is a writer and an author. She's an artist, and she's also a student with Cindy's Nutrition Academy. Beautiful soul inside and out. Welcome to our show, gorgeous girl.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
You know, whilst we start this off and we're talking about you being a mum, and I know that is one of your highest values right now, being the best mama bear that you can be, maybe you could take us on a little journey as to what led you down into becoming an advocate for natural health and wellness, and for also inspiring your children to really trust their incredible bodies to be the best that they can be. You've got an incredible story. You love talking about the positive birth experiences, and I think our listener would love to hear where it all began for you.
Absolutely. So when I fell pregnant with my first child, my son Luca, I was very mainstream. I did everything by the book. And for the most of my pregnancy, it started off and that was fine. But then I did the glucose test and I reacted terribly to that. And I started researching because I knew there must have been a better way. Like I was already eating pretty well. And I looked around and I saw, there was always kids in the hospital. There was so many kids with allergies and intolerances. And I just thought, this cannot be good enough. And one day while I was reading, I read a study. I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was something like 1 in 3 kids have allergies and intolerance and an autoimmune disease. I just thought, that's not good enough. There's got to be a better way than that. So I started doing more research, and through my research, I found Cindy, and I absolutely fell in love. So I started studying the nutrition course, and it's just gone on from there. So I realized that all the packaged foods, the additives and preservatives weren't serving the kids. All the, the fruit pouches and yogurts and things like that, they weren't getting the nutrition that they needed. So I said, no, this is not going to be how things are going to be for my son. So his first foods were egg yolks and raw liver and bone broth. And he's absolutely thrived ever since. So now I have 4 kids. So I have Luca, who is 6, Viola, who is 5, Ayana, who is 3, and Everly, who is 1. And they're all really great eaters. They're really healthy. We don't go to the doctor very often. They all eat, actually last night we had them eating raw liver. Just before we had dinner, I was cutting it up to put it in their meal, and they were eating raw liver. And I was looking at it, I was like, I cannot believe, there's so many kids out there that are so fussy because their brains are being tricked by the chemicals in their food that they just don't want to eat real food. They just want more of the packaged pouches and frozen meals and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's how my journey started.
It's interesting that it starts with children. We've had many podcasts where we've interviewed people, and their eyes have been woken by their children, whether their children has a disease or whether they've had a problem. Their eyes just seem to be awakened. And obviously, you being pregnant was the impetus to do the best that you could possibly do for your firstborn, Luca. So let's talk about, I guess we could compare the differences between, what's happening in the natural world versus the world that seems to be very mechanistic. And, we talk about the difference between vitalism and mechanism. And at the moment, I feel like that so many people are thinking more mechanistically than they're thinking vitalistically. And when we have a child, we have no control. We have no control. We have an innate intelligence that knows exactly what it's doing. It knows how to get that baby to be the exact thing that it should be. So if we were to compare what you were thinking in the beginning of your pregnancy to what you were thinking towards the end, can you give us just a little brief on that? Because it sounds like you did a paradigm shift somewhere in those months, those 9 months.
Yeah. So really, when I fell pregnant, I had no idea what I was going into. He was a surprise baby. And I had no idea about any of things. So I went to the doctor, I did the ultrasounds, I did everything that they told me to, took all the vitamins. I was drinking like 4 liters of water and forcing myself to drink it every single day because no one had ever said to me, follow your gut, listen to your intuition, do what you think is right for your body. So I was just forcing myself to eat what I thought was right back then. But when we did the glucose test, it's an absolutely horrible test. And I was considered high risk because 2 of my siblings have diabetes. I actually vomited straight away. And they were like, oh, that's fine. We'll still do the test, but you'll probably have to come back again next week. I was like, you kidding me? And you're supposed to fast as well. So I hadn't eaten, I think, overnight. And then there was a delay in the hospital. So I was lying in the waiting room, hadn't eaten in, I don't know, it would have been like 18 hours or something. And I felt like I was going to pass out. My blood had been taken. I had vomited. And I was actually lying on the floor in the kids' space and my head was spinning and I thought I was dying. And I was in the reception of a doctor's thing. And in the end, the nurse who had taken my blood came out, saw me and went and stole someone else's lunch and fed it to me because I'd asked to go up and get salad from the deli up the road and they'd actually said no. And she saw me on the floor. She's like, holy moly. And then they wanted to do it again the next week because I hadn't passed the test because like I just vomited that drink up. And I looked at the drink and I was like, this is pure sugar plus chemicals and additives and preservatives. I'm like, I don't drink this. I don't drink soda. I don't drink any of this. So of course my body's going to react in such a kind of violent manner. So I refused to do the test again and I got myself a little blood monitor thing and monitored it that way. But a couple of days later, I ended up in hospital because my son stopped moving and I was having really sharp belly pains. It turned out okay. He was fine. He eventually did a big kick and they were happy with me to go home. But that was kind of like I thought I was dying in the doctor's office while I was waiting to have my blood taken again. And then a couple of days later, I was back in hospital with sharp pains and couldn't feel him moving and stuff when I usually could. So I just thought this cannot be right. Like as if everyone has this every pregnancy. And I knew it wasn't right for me and they were insisting on me doing it again. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do this myself. So I did a ton of research and I found a study that actually said if you don't eat a lot of sugar and processed foods, having it in such a high dose at once, like when you do the test and you have to drink that horrible sugary drink, can actually give you the opposite result. Like it's a false positive because it's your body's reacting so violently because it's not used to it. And so I thought, well, that's probably what happened to me. So yeah, I refused it and they weren't happy about it. But that kind of started me on my journey of realizing that I didn't have to do every single thing that they told me to do. And I started researching everything from then on. And if I didn't feel comfortable doing it, I didn't do it.
Makes sense. And you're right about that glucose tolerance test. If you're on the ketogenic diet or you're in ketosis and you don't eat many sugars, what it's recommended is 3 days before you eat carbohydrates for 3 days. Yeah. So that, number one, you do not have that false test. And I don't know whether you can tolerate it. It sounded like, and when you read the ingredients, like you said, I did an article on it and I read the ingredients and I just thought, like, this is mechanism. We want to throw your sugar out to see whether you do have diabetes or gestational diabetes. You said that you have 2 siblings with diabetes. You're only young. Is that type 1 or type 2?
It's type 1.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Wow. So there's a propensity for autoimmune diseases then in your family?
Yes.
Do you know, growing up, do you know what if you were exposed to anything?
Not really. I don't know. We grew up in on big properties, but not like farming properties, so there weren't chemical use or anything like that. No, I mean we grew up. Yeah, no, and we did eat relatively well, like for what most people think, packet sauces and that kind of stuff. But it was still a lot better than the alternative, which is constant junk food and all that kind of stuff. But no, I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just find it fascinating that in one family there's two. Often there's one, because of it is an autoimmune disease. But to see two is quite interesting. We might have to discuss this later. But moving forward, so once you've done the glucose tolerance test, you realise that you didn't have to do everything that you were told to do. Did you question ultrasounds?
I was actually beyond the point then for actually having an ultrasound. So I'd already had all the ultrasounds you're supposed to have. But for my next pregnancy, I started questioning it. I only had one ultrasound with that one. And then the following two pregnancies, I decided no ultrasounds at all.
Well done. And when did you do research on that, or did you just make it was just all part of the natural consequence of thing, or had you done that research?
I didn't go too deep in with that one because I didn't feel like I needed it. My theory was that if there was something wrong, we would deal with it when it came out. Like, it wasn't going to change whether or not I wanted to be pregnant. I didn't want to know the gender, and so I really wasn't overly concerned, and I didn't feel right. So I just decided not to and follow my gut on that one.
And was Luca a home birth or a...
No, so my first two were hospital births.
Hospital births?
Yes, but in the birthing centre. So I still, even before I went or started changing, I wanted a natural birth. Everyone was like, oh, you're going to want the epidural, you're going to want this. And I'm like, no, I think I can do it. But then you start reading all the negative birth stories, and everyone, like, shopping, in the shopping line at Coles, people are like, oh, my baby came out like this and they had to cut me from one end to the other to get him out and blah, blah, blah. And like, I was surrounded by all these people that had negative stories that pushed it onto me wherever I went. And it affected me quite a lot. And for my own mental health, I decided to just block it all out. I was like, no, baby's got to come out. I know I can do it one way or another. I'm going to be in hospital, so if there's an emergency, they can handle that. But I realized I just needed to trust myself and, trust my body's ability to birth my baby. So I just blocked everything out. If people started trying to talk to me, I just kind of zoned out without being too rude or, not ignoring them, but I just kind of tried to zone out or walk away. And that helped a lot. So I went in to my first birth having no idea what I was doing. I hadn't researched any of that. I was like, no, my body can do it. And it ended up serving me well. It was much better than focusing on all the negatives.
It's the way to do it, hey? So let's hear a positive one then. For people who are listening to this that want to hear a positive birth story, can you give us an example of a positive birth story?
Sure. Well, okay, so I'll start with my first, though, because it was still a pretty good story. So we went in from the very first niggle of me thinking I could potentially be in labour. It was about 7 hours. And I remember I'd been living with my in-laws at this time, and my husband had gone out for work that morning. And I got up and I went and had a shower, and I was like, I think I'm having the baby today, so I'm going to shave everything. And I went into the kitchen to make some breakfast. And my father-in-law came, and it was quite early in the morning. And he's like, oh, you're up early. And as he asked me that question, I kind of leaned over the counter into a contraction. I was like, oh, and he's like, what? And I was like, oh, I think I'm in labour. His face just went blank. He turned on his heel. They've got a very big house. He walked all the way down the hallway, and halfway down I could hear him, Rosa, which is my mother-in-law, get out of bed. We're having a baby. They called my husband. My husband came, and we ended up going to the hospital. And the nurse had tried to get me to lie on the bed, but she would just come in for a few minutes and then leave, and then I'd move, and I'd be like, no, I don't want clothes. I want to do what I want to do. So I was kneeling on all fours, and they're like, oh, try lying down. I'm like, no, this is where I need to be. And I'd felt the need to start pushing. And the student midwife that was in there with me was like, no, you can't push. And I'm like, my body is pushing whether you like it or not. And her face, she was like, oh, no, don't push. And she ran out to go get the midwife who was in charge. And the midwife kind of casually strolled in, and she's like, no, you're not anywhere near it yet. And as she went to put her hands underneath me to check, he came out. She was like, "Oh, you're only about halfway." Oh, he's here. And like, I've been telling them, I'm like, "No, I need to push. He's coming out." And she's like, "No, you're not even halfway, doll." And he was out. And that was me just saying, "No, I'm doing what my body's telling me to do." Rather than, because they were telling me to stop pushing. You don't, like, I was like, I don't have control over this. My body is pushing whether you tell me to stop or not. So, and that kind of gave me the reassurance that, yes, my body did know what I needed to do more than the midwives knew. And so with my second, Viola, I was only in hospital for about 15 minutes before she came out. Full labor of me knowing I was in labor. It was only about an hour. And it was the same thing. I'd done more research then, so I didn't want to have the shot that they give you to get the placenta out. And we went in and she's like, "Oh, it's only your second. You got some time. How long have you been in labor?" I'm like, "Oh, about 40 minutes. And then I'd gotten in the shower and I was like, no, I need to push. And they were like, "What?" "No, you don't." And I'm like, "Yes, I do." And so I just let my body do its thing and start pushing. And she came out a couple of minutes later. And then there was literally a midwife trying to hold my leg down to put that shot in that helped get the placenta out. And I knew I hadn't want that. And I already told her. And she was like, no, it's nothing. It'll just help you get the placenta. And I'm like, no, I can push it out myself. I don't need that. I can't remember what it's called. And it was actually my student midwife that had been with me for all my appointments that actually said, no. She said, "No, you haven't got permission to do that." And they actually had a couple of the other midwives come in because they'd never seen anyone refuse it. So I think it was 4 or 5 midwives that came in and they were like, "But you can't do it without the shot." And I was like, "Yes, I can. Just let me feed my baby first and then I'll do it." And they're like, "No, it needs to come out now." And I hadn't let them cut the cord either this time. And they were like, no, it's dangerous. And I'm like, "No, you're not cutting the cord and I'm not getting the placenta out till my baby's had her first feed." So they didn't like me very much. And yeah, I did that. And eventually the head midwife or whatever they're called came in and said, "No, if you don't get it out now, you're going to go into shock and blah, blah, blah. So we need to get it out." So I handed my baby to my husband and get up on all 4 knees and on all 4s and pushed it out. And they were in shock. They were like, "Why wouldn't you just have the shot to get it out easy?" I'm like, "I did it. It was fine." But following that, I thought, no, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to have to fight with someone to do it the way I want to do it. Then I fell pregnant again. And my third Ayana, I knew that I looked into home births, but they're very expensive, especially if you have a quick birth. I thought, well, if I pay, whatever it is, $6,000 or something or other for a home birth, and then the baby's out before they even arrive, I couldn't justify it. So I was like, no, I'll do a hospital birth again, but I'll do what I want to do. And I'll just, not let them make any decisions that I don't want to do. But about halfway through my pregnancy, I went in for a midwife appointment. I think it was only my second appointment. I'd only gone to like the absolutely necessary appointments. And it didn't start off very good because I walked in with my 2 youngest and I think they were like 2 and 1 at the time. And she'd offered them lollipops. And I said, no. Yeah, I said, no, they don't need a lollipop. That's fine. And she's like, "Oh, it's okay. It's just a treat." And I'm like, "No, they're not having lollipops." And I handed them seaweed. She was horrified. So it didn't start off very well. She didn't like me from the get-go. And she's, starting to ask me questions, all the testing and different things that they wanted to do. And then she brought up the glucose test. And I said, "No, I'm not going to be doing that. I can monitor my blood sugar levels myself." And she's like, "Oh, no." And she tried to convince me. She spent about 20 minutes trying to convince me that I needed to do this and that. And I was going to kill my baby if not. They could come out needing this. And she's like, "Oh, well, if you don't do the testing for, I think it's strep B, you're going to need antibiotics as a precaution." So I was going to have to be hooked up anyway. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. We're going to monitor the baby after they're born. And if it's a problem, we can deal with it then. I'm not doing antibiotics as a precaution. So she didn't like me because I basically refused to do everything that she said. And she's like, "All right, well, let me just finish off your paperwork and then we'll be done." And she actually walked off. She was gone for about 10 minutes. She came back with a doctor who then sat and lectured me even more on it all. And while this doctor was lecturing me, she booked me into all my appointments, with a diabetes specialist and ultrasounds and all sorts of things. And she's like, "All right, here's your appointments. Make sure you show up." And then left. And I walked out of there, like, I called my husband and cried. And I'm like, they're going to call child services on me. This woman was horrible. And it turned out I was very lucky. My friend at the time who lived around the corner had gotten pregnant as well. And I called her and I'm like, what am I going to do? And she actually had a private midwife who had, and I didn't even know this was a thing, but she had a private midwife that came to her house and did all of her appointments with her there. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I need. That I need someone. And she's like, they'll let you do what you want. They just more about trusting your own body. And I was like, right, I'll call her. And it was very late in your pregnancy to book a private midwife. Usually, especially in Adelaide, we've only got a couple that are actually available for home birth and home appointments. And she's like, oh, but since I'm visiting your friend, I'll just come and visit when at the same time as your friend, because she didn't live nearby either. But she's like, seeing as I'm coming to see Ange, I'll come and see you on the same days. And that's the first appointment that I had with her. She came in, she looked over my previous births, all the history and everything. She looked at me, she's like, you were built to birth babies. You know what you're doing. And it was the first time that anyone had actually said, no, you can do it. I trust you to make the decisions that you want to make. And she legally had to, give me the risks and the warnings, but she said that she's like, look, this is just what I have to do to tell you that this is the risks, this is the pros, the cons, but you ultimately get to make the decision. And from then on out, it was great because I just said, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And she said, okay, cool. This could happen, but this could also not happen. You do what you want to do. When it was coming closer, when I was, I think, about 30 something weeks, I said to her, I'm like, look, I'm concerned that I might potentially have the baby at home because my last birth was pretty quick. It was only an hour. I'm like, obviously I've got to get the kids somewhere before we go into the hospital. And she's like, oh, yep, that's cool. So this is what you do if you have a home birth. She'd given me the scissors, the sterile scissors and the cord clamps and kind of talked everything through with me. And she's like, look, if you do accidentally give birth at home, baby's happy, drinking, breathing, crying, I'm happy to come straight to you. So you don't have to go to the hospital. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I wanted that so bad that I think I actually manifested it. I was like, no, that's what I want to do. And at that point, my husband was still not 100% comfortable with that, which I understood and I was fine with. Like, I wanted him to be comfortable as well because it's his baby. And I know there's a lot of people that say, but it's your body and your birth. And I was like, no, I respect my husband enough to know what he's comfortable with. And so we'd still decided to go to the birth centre if we needed to. But I said to him, look, if I'm in labour and I feel like the baby's coming out, we're staying home. I'm not getting in the car and having a car birth. And he's like, yep, no, that's cool. So yeah, we came to an agreement. But anyway, I think I manifested a home birth. I read all the home birth books. I did a home birth course, which is a series of videos that you kind of watch, and I turned that on every night and watched a couple of episodes. And then I was about 42 weeks, and I woke up one morning and I wasn't having any contractions, but I did have kind of little niggles that I thought were Braxton Hicks. So I was like, all right, I'm going to have a bath. The other two kids are still asleep. I'm going to have a nice relaxing bath. So I got in the bath and it was probably about an hour or so. And I called my friend. I'm like, I've got to get this baby out. I'm done being pregnant. And she's like, all right, let's go for a hike. And I'm like, yep, let's do it. We'll go for a hike. So we planned to meet at like 10 o'clock at this hill that's nearby to climb up it. And she's got two kids and I had two kids. And she was pregnant as well. So it was going to be fun. I'm like, yep, let's do it. A couple minutes later, Viola woke up, who was one, and she crawled into the bath with me. And then I felt like it was getting a bit stronger, the contractions, but I was like, oh, I'll get out and start timing it and get ready for the hike and just see how we're going. So I stood up. So we have a shower bath. So I stood up in the bath to drain the bath and kind of rinse off with the shower. And as I stood up, my body was like, nah, you need to push. I was overwhelmed with just, the urge to push. And I called out to my husband. Not even 10 seconds later, my baby was out.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
So I had one contraction where I was like, holy crap, I'm pushing. Joe! And then one more straight after it. And he kind of just made it to the doorway as she came out. And my 1-year-old, who was still in the bath with me, was like, Mum's pooping. Oh, it's a baby. So that was hilarious.
And did your friend come round for the hike and did you go for the hike? That's what I want to know.
No. So I text her and I'm like, yeah, we can cancel that. I've had the baby. And she's like, what? We planned the hike like 15 minutes ago. I was like, yeah, she came out. So that was awesome. And I just lied back down in the bath and started feeding the baby. And you know how after you give birth, you kind of want a little bit of a high. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to tell everyone that the baby's out. So I took a couple of photos and I was sending it out. And I'm like, just had my baby in the bath. I didn't follow it up with anything else. So my family freaked out and called an ambulance for me. And so I'd fed the baby in the bath. Joe cut the cord and took the baby into the lounge room because I was worried it was getting a little bit cold. So he took her into the lounge room while I was like, all right, I'll just, kind of clean up and come in and feed her a bit again. And so my 2-year-old stayed in the bath with me with the bowl for the placenta and helped me catch it. And he was asking all the questions. He's like, what is that? Why are you bleeding? I'm like, well, that's what feeds the baby when she's in my tummy. And he was intrigued. He had lots of questions and he liked telling everyone for weeks afterwards that he caught the placenta that came out of mummy's tummy. But he wasn't scared or traumatized or anything like that people generally think is a problem with home births. So that happened. I got out. I went back onto the couch. I sat down, was feeding the baby. Joe was making me some food. And we hear a knock on the door and we're like, what? So Joe goes and answers it. And you can kind of see the couch from our front door. So he answers it and there's these ambos. And they're like, oh, we're here for the lady that just had the baby. And he's like, oh, we didn't call you. But they could see me on the couch. And I'm sitting there like naked, wrapped in blankets, feeding the baby. And they're like, ma'am, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But you can leave. We don't need you. And they're like, no, we need to take you to hospital. And I was like, no, we didn't call you. We don't need you. And they were pretty insistent. They're like, it took a little while, but we were like, no, we don't need you. We're fine. I had 3 ambulances with their sirens sitting out the front of my house, which my friend who lived around the corner who I'd planned the hike with saw and like was freaking out as well. She's like, what's happened? But eventually we were like, no, it's all good. They're like, well, can we just see the baby? Because I told them I had a private midwife on the way. And they're like, all right, well, let us just see the baby and see that she's alive. And I'm like, yeah. So they kind of looked under the blankets and saw that she was drinking and happy. And then they're like, oh, what about the placenta though? And I'm like, oh, it's intact. It's in the bathroom on the counter if you want to go check it out. And the poor ambulance guy was just like, no, that's okay. So they eventually left. And yeah, I didn't have to go to hospital, which was great. And so my midwife came a little while later, kind of checked over everything. But yeah, she was really happy. And the baby I've got a photo of Ayana actually. She was less than an hour old and she's sitting in my husband's arms and her head is up. Her eyes are wide open looking at me, taking the photo. It was beautiful. And I loved having the kids around. They still talk about it to this day. I mean, they were only 2 and 1 and they still remember it and talk about it. Every bath I had with Viola afterwards, she was like, are we having another baby? Like, no, not today.
I'll just interrupt you a second there, Rebekah. It's almost like we're afraid of what's natural. In your humble opinion, as a mother who's seen the hospital system, and again, I'm not knocking it, it's there for a reason, and in emergency situations, there's no better place, I would imagine. But the actual trusting of the innate intelligence of a mother to give birth, it's not some happy, clappy lie back and let's relax and chill and just pop a baby out. It is a primal, very guttural, raw act to give birth to a child. Yet it seems in this day and age, we're actually quite frightened of that, or we don't trust it, or we feel there needs to be some sort of medical or other intervention. What is your experience in understanding that? Are we getting better at going back to what our primal forefathers and mothers did? Or do you think we're getting more stressed and associated to what we think we need from a medical point of view?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I know when I was first pregnant, all I knew was the stories that I had been told and what I saw on TV, which was women lying on their backs, being held down, screaming in agony like the entire time, not just through contractions. It was constant screaming. And that's all I knew. But it's not like that. Like I did give birth loudly. I was a loud one. I know there's people who do, don't feel the need to scream, but I did give birth loudly, but it was only through those contractions and then there was peace afterwards. And I think, I don't think people realize. I think it's a lot better these days. It's starting to come a little bit more, not mainstream. Like there are still plenty of people who believe that you can't give birth without being in hospital, or it's dangerous, or you're a terrible mother if you don't. But I think there is a beautiful movement at the moment happening where people are starting to realize. And it's funny because people who choose to give birth at home are often ones that have had a baby in the hospital and they decide to go different route because they've been so traumatized. And then there's the group of people that have been traumatized by being in hospital that's kind of cemented for them that they can never give birth without being in hospital, without the doctors saving their child. And I know there are obviously instances where things go wrong, but I think for the most part, it's actually, we need to change our thinking about giving birth, because it's not, this horrible, you have to be lying on your back, screaming in agony kind of process. And definitely my third and fourth births were beautiful. They were both at home, and I had my kids around me. I had my husband with me, and it was just such a better way to give birth for me.
You see it in the movies as well. It is like a societal thing, that it's not what you're saying. It's actually, what the movies predict, talk about, or they go through that whole motion of it. So I'm in agreement with you there, most definitely. I was when you were saying about birth, and I think you said got on your hands and knees, and they wouldn't let you get on your hands and knees. I think that's what I heard.
They tried to tell me that I should be lying down, and I said, nope, this is where I'm going to be. So I was on my hands and knees. I think every time I gave birth.
It's interesting. They call that the Gaskin maneuver, because, and as you're saying it, I'm like going, oh, I remember this so well. So Iana, your third.
Iana, yep.
Iana. Well, Iana May Gaskin did the Gaskin maneuver. So you could have just said to them you were related in some way. I don't know, but it's just I find it interesting. I had one home birth, and the rest, one was a birthing center and the other one was hospital, because there was nothing else available for me. So, and I realize now I probably could have just been at home, but I just remember I was told by the midwife that was in attendance that my baby was posterior and it would take a long time. And in my mind, I went, no bloody way. This isn't going to be a long time. I'm not putting up with that. It's funny what you say in your head. And I started this rocking movement, and she was out within 30 minutes. Now, I got to meet Ina May Gaskin of the Gaskin maneuver.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to meet her, and I was telling her about my maneuver. And do you know what I loved about her? Like, this was only 8 years ago, probably 8-9 years ago, as I was showing her my maneuver. She was so intrigued by it. And she says, I can see how that would turn a posterior baby. That is incredible. I'm going to teach my midwives. Like, what I love is that somebody as profound as her in midwifery still can learn. And I think that what's happened in the birthing fraternity is that it's fear, and they don't want to learn it almost. This is the way we do it. It's a protocol. This is how we do it. We need to do how many ultrasounds? You've got to do glucose tolerance test. You've got to do all of these things. And it's so refreshing to hear a young woman, and you are still very young despite having 4 children, a young woman being her own advocate. I don't know, you didn't talk about your husband being your advocate at that time. You said that you were the one that was saying, no, we will not be doing this. This is the way it's going to be, and I think it's stories are where we learn. And I think your story is quite incredible on how you took control, did what you wanted, realized you didn't have to do what they said, that there was another option and another way. And so I really want to congratulate you on that. But now you have 4 children, 1, 3, what is it? 1, 3,
5 and 6.
5 and 6. So you've had them really close together.
Yeah.
But you've also been very active, number 1, in doing my course, but number 2, in the books that you have created for children. And I know my grandchildren love it, but my children love it. They're in their 30s now, but they love it because it's not your usual 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, and your other book is A Place to Belong. It's not your usual. It's very much based on your philosophy and what you have gleaned, I guess. And I've had conversations with you before about, parents and siblings and in-laws, and how you navigate that, because obviously they rang the ambulance because they were worried, but how you've navigated that. But I'd love to talk to you about what was your reasoning behind writing your first book? Why did you decide to do it?
Well, books were very important to me growing up, and I always wanted to write a children's book. So my first book, I was inspired just after I'd given birth to write it. It was A Place to Belong, and it kind of the sun and the moon belong. Oh God, I can't remember the first line, but it's all about things belonging. So the sun and the moon belong in the sky. The mountains and clouds are also up high, and it ends really cutely with "Together we belong as a family." So my son inspired that one. And I dedicated it to him. I wrote this lovely dedication at the beginning. Now I've got 3 more kids, so I need to write 3 more books to dedicate to them. But I haven't got to that yet. But yeah, then I think my second book I actually started years and years ago. I had it in my head that I wanted to do an ABC book that didn't have what was typically in an ABC book. So
A is for apple.
Not apple. Yeah, well, yeah, I did apple cider.
Yeah, you didn't want to do that.
Original with that. B was for bone broth and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I bought one for my son, and I can't remember what everything was, but the thing that got me really was X is for X-ray.
Yeah.
The kid knows what X-ray is. And I mean, to be fair, kids probably don't know what's in my book, but I was like, I'd rather them learn about zinc and bone broth and apple cider vinegar than X-rays at 2 years old.
Mm. So
I started writing this thing and kind of filling in the gaps on my phone, and then it kind of just sat there for a year or two. And I was really concerned that people wouldn't like it. And I was like, nah. And then I started buying books for my daughter, my second child, an ABC book. And I was like, I should just do it for them. Like, why am I worried about what other people think? I'll do it for them. And if no one buys it, then so be it. So I decided to do it, and I think it took me about 6 weeks from start to finish, doing all the illustrations. And I published it, and I sold out of, I think I only printed 200 to start off with, and I sold them all because people absolutely loved it. And so, yeah, it's got bone broth and organ meats and zinc.
Probiotics.
Yeah. Dandelion. So that
is for immunity. I just love it. It's just brilliant.
Thank you.
So questions, we were just talking about having inquiry and questioning things. So yeah,
I did struggle with X though, because I was like, I thought there was an X-ray fish, and I'm like, maybe I'll put X-ray fish, and I couldn't. And then it came to me, I was like, oh, X is, what did I say?
It marks the spot where Dad says he'll plant our apple tree.
Yeah. So I went with that. I was like, that's a better one. And then I've got a big X on the top of a hill as the illustration. So that's what I ended up doing with instead. And the kids actually love that because they point to the X every time. So, yeah. And then people loved it. So there was demand for it. And then people were like, well, you got to do a 1, 2, 3 book to match. So, yeah, I did that. And actually the reason I did that was because I wanted to go to Noosa to the summit with you, Cindy. And I was like, I will get it done in time for the summit so that I have a reason to go so I can justify it. So I took the book to sell and launch at the summit. So there's a 1, 2, 3 book to match now.
Yeah, so it was launched July 2023, and it's another brilliant book. I think when you're thinking this way and you're not thinking a different way, that's where the expression comes in. And I think that's why the kids love it. One of them, that Place to Belong, my grandson loves it so much that he's absolutely reads it over and over and again. I read it to him, but he's always flicking the pages on me. So, yeah. I
have to send you another copy. I saw the
I know. Yeah, I know. So what about, we've heard the birth stories. We've learned about the books, and we'll learn where we can get all these towards the end. What about how you brought your children up? Like, because if we do it traditionally, you would, like, I remember my mum said at 5 weeks she had to stop. They recommended giving solids at 5 weeks. This was the 1950s and 60s, remember? And then like now breast is best, they do say that, they have to say that. But
they still offer formula.
And then formula, yes.
Still kind of gets pushed as well. They're like, oh, breast is best, but here, have a can of formula or a sample to try. And then you're like, well, which is best?
Yeah, exactly. They always do that in the hospital. So how have you brought your children up differently in the regard of their health, in regard of education, in regard of socialization, in regard of like a lot of kids, a lot of parents are helicopter parents. Tell us how you brought these children up.
Well, I completely the opposite. I see what everyone else is doing that's not working, and I do the opposite. So I make all of our food from scratch, and we homeschool. The kids' first foods, I didn't start them till they were about 6 months. My first actually wasn't really interested in it, so I gave him bone broth in a little squeezy pouch from 6 months, but he didn't really start anything till he was about 8 months. And they started off on egg and liver. And for the most part, they ate what we ate. So I didn't make special meals for the kids. I didn't do purees. We did smoothies, which I guess is the same as a kind of puree, which I did in little squeezy pouches. We have some little reusable ones, which I like to, pack in the nutrients in there. But most of our food is made from scratch. I sneak in organ meats and that kind of stuff. Although I say sneak in, but my kids know it's in there. Like they saw me last night cutting up liver, and they were like, "Oh, can we try it?" And so they're sitting there eating frozen liver, which I'm trying to get into their meal so we can have dinner. And I sat back and I'm like, actually, I'd rather them eat the liver on its own. So I let them just kind of sit there and pick at it, and then 10 minutes later, when they were done with that, then I served dinner. But my thing is, for food, it's quality over quantity. So I don't care how much my kids eat, as long as they're trying everything on their plates. Oh, I just hit my microphone. So we have a rule that they have to try everything, and I usually try and have a couple of safe foods that I know they're going to eat. So they love broccoli, so I always have broccoli on the side and a couple of different things. They always have to try it, but I don't force them to eat. They don't have to finish their plate if they say they don't want to, because I want them to learn to eat intuitively. But we don't give food later on to fill them up. Like we don't have sandwich bread or anything like that. And we don't have any frozen meals that I don't make a second meal. I say that after dinner, if they're still hungry later on, they can have yogurt with some fruit. They can have leftovers from a previous night, or they can have a boiled egg. And that's how we do it. And the kids kids are kids. They're not always perfect, but for the most part, they eat kind of at least half of their plate. They try everything. If they don't like something in particular, I say, that's cool. Just have a mouthful. You don't like it, you don't have to eat anymore. And then usually they'll go for a second or third helping of broccoli and chickpeas. And they do love rice, which I cook in butter, bone broth, and stinging nettle. So I try and make everything that we eat as nutrient dense as possible. So if they only eat a couple of mouthfuls, then it doesn't matter. I know that they're still getting a lot of nutrition. And if I am you still, as a parent, you still worry if they haven't eaten enough. So if I am concerned, later in the evening, I'll make a smoothie, which will have, depending on what we have, but usually it has like a banana, a couple of eggs. So I warm it up. It's kind of like, we call it a hot chocolate muscle milk. So it'll have, a banana, a couple of eggs, milk or water, greens powder, liver powder, cacao powder, and either a couple of dates or some fermented garlic honey. And they'll have that in the evening if they haven't eaten a lot earlier on. And they love it. They'll drink it and they'll be like, look at my muscles. My muscle milk's made my muscles all big, and they'll show me their muscles. But for the most part, I control what we eat in the house. And when we go out, it's obviously a lot harder, especially as they get older. So I don't stress now as much as I do when we go out, because I know when they get back home, we'll fill them back up on the nutrient foods that they need.
What about when it comes to your children having a health expression where they're not completely well, or they get a bug, or they do get run down, or they do get stressed? How do you approach treating any sort of medical expressions or things where their health gets perhaps compromised?
The first thing we do is say, so my son recently came to us and he's like, oh, I'm not feeling well. I've got a bit of tummy bug, I think. And we're like, all right, cool. So the first thing we tell him to do is go out and lie on the trampoline in the sun for 10 minutes. And he'll go out and lie out there. And sometimes he'll fall asleep for 10 minutes. But now he actually does it himself. So if he wakes up and he doesn't feel well, or he's got a bit of a headache, he'll go out there with his drink bottle and lie down in the sun for a few minutes. And he'll come back in. He's like, I'm still not feeling great. I'll give them some vitamin C, the camu and oranges and that kind of thing. But we don't keep Panadol or a thermometer or anything like that on hand. For the most part, they don't get sick for very long. And I've never felt like they're so sick that I need to do anything more than just kind of support their body in healing itself. For the most part, they just go lie down. We encourage them to rest. If the weather outside isn't suitable for the lying on the trampoline in the sun, they'll lie down on the couch and we'll diffuse some oils. We'll probably put the TV on just to kind of relax them or relax the other kids so they don't disturb them. For the most part, it's just, okay, so what do you think you need? Oh, my head's spinning. Do you want to lie down for a bit? That might help. And just kind of following their intuition and seeing what they think they need. If they're not sure, then I'll suggest a couple of things. Say, oh, well, you know what? Oranges are pretty rich in vitamin C. You haven't eaten much. How about we try eating a couple of oranges? Just that kind of thing. Like I said, we don't keep Panadol or anything like that on hand. If it got to a point where they were so sick that I was concerned about it, obviously then we would take it further. But at that point, I think it would be a hospital visit. Like, that's how bad it would have to get for me to say, okay, well, this isn't working, so let's go. Because obviously hospitals are great for when you need them for emergencies and that kind of thing, but it's never gotten to that point. Fevers, often I don't think we've ever had a fever last more than kind of 24 hours. And then it's more like, I know the body is doing its thing to kind of get rid of whatever's going on, and the fever is there for a reason. So I don't try and, reduce the fever. We just kind of make the kid as comfortable as possible and support their body in healing itself.
It really is so powerful when a mother and a father can take their child's health expression or illness or concern or tummy ache or whatever it is, and actually teach them that that's the body's way of responding to something, as opposed to there's something wrong with them. When it comes to the education of your children, and when it comes to actually teaching them to read or write, there's many different philosophies out there, like the Steiner philosophy and different ways, Montessori and different alternative type of schools that have a very creative mindset. How do you approach the education of your children?
So we're just kind of getting started. I mean, my oldest is only 6, but we've decided to homeschool. That may or may not be the whole way through. We're going to just take it a year at a time and see what we can handle and what their interests are and follow it that way. We go to a lot of homeschool catch-ups. We do a bush school at the moment where the kids walk around with a guy who knows everything about every native plant and mushroom and whatever. And they just go for bushwalks basically. And he's like, oh, this plant, you can use this for this, and it heals this way. And they all have their little pocket knives and they go out and forage, and, we collect nasturtium leaves and stinging nettle and that kind of thing to go home and cook later on, and mushrooms. We love foraging for mushrooms. So at the moment, it's mostly just homeschool catch-ups that we do. I don't follow any kind of, my son really doesn't like sitting down and doing kind of paperwork and that kind of thing. We do the Reading Eggs program, but aside from that, there's no technology involved. And it's mostly just following their intuition and what they want to learn about, and learning from other kids as well. The thing I love about homeschool catch-ups is there's kids of all ages. So my son will hang out. There's a couple of kids that are older than him that are 10 and 12, and he loves hanging out. Then he goes off and he comes back and he's like, oh, so-and-so said that if I, cover my body in this plant, it'll stop itches. And if I do this, it'll help with whatever other thing. He's like, if I get a rash, I can put this on there and chew it up and spit it out and, put it on a bite, and it'll help calm that down. And I love that they learn from each other. And I think that's, especially at the younger age, that's more important, and learning to socialize that way than sitting down at a desk. I know when I grew up going to school, and I hated sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. I didn't learn that well that way. Like, I would sit there and listen all day and wouldn't actually take anything in. But then I'd go home and read a book, and I'd learn more from that book than actually what I did at school. And I did the same thing, through the older years when I was in year 11 and 12 and whatever. I wouldn't take in what the teacher was saying. I didn't sit well. I didn't learn well when I was sitting there doing nothing. I'd often draw, or I do something with my hands while I'm listening to a podcast or I'm listening to an Audible book, even now. And I find that I take in a lot more that way than sitting down and just trying to focus, because it never worked for me very well. So, and I see that in my son as well. So
we know that when the brain actually goes into a more restful state, cognitively, we can accept and embrace more information as opposed to having it very distracted or overloaded. I'd be really curious to understand then, as a modern day mum, and seeing the way technology, maybe ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, lab meats, medicines for everything and anything. It looks like when you observe the way we're going that we're advancing in technology and medicine and pharmaceuticals, and we're doing an incredible job from all of these points of view, if you look at it that way. But does it worry you as a mum? Does it concern you? We're doing too many things. We're losing the human element. What are your concerns as a mum for the future generations?
Well, I look at I just look at the, society, and I see kids who are sicker than ever, more confused than ever. Their mental health is shocking. They're not resilient. And it worries me. Like, it cannot be, like, it can't be normal. It cannot be how things should be. And I don't believe it should be. So I'm just trying to do, the best that I can to change that for my kids. I share a lot on social media because I do try and, help other parents as well. And I've got people that have come back to me and they ask me about certain meals and certain things that we do. It's worrying because while, it might look good on paper, it doesn't look good if you look at it properly. You know what I mean? Like, the kids, it's really sad. The mental health of kids these days, especially, is really concerning, I think.
Well, I think you're doing a remarkable job. And I think you're doing something that's, as Cindy always alludes to, how important it is to stay curious and to be open to learning new and more wonderful things. And I think as a mum, I don't know if you feel, but, we were never given a handbook. Everyone tells you different things, but you're not exactly handed over the book of when a child does this or the other one does that. You're learning as you're growing up with your children. What would be your biggest wish for your 4 babes as they evolve and become and turn into adults? What is your greatest wish for them, and to perhaps even carry on your legacy of having this more open-hearted, soulful connection to learn, to grow, to eat, and to nourish ourselves inside and out? What is your greatest wish for your babes?
Well, I mean, more than anything, I want them to be happy. I want them to know who they are. And I want them to know what works for their body. I want them to, be able to eat intuitively. I want them to go and learn what they want to learn. I don't want them to feel like they have to do anything because everyone else is doing it. And I don't care what my kids grow up and want to do, as long as they are happy and they believe that is what they are meant to do, as long as they are good people, obviously. But I think we focus so much on what everyone else thinks we should be doing, and it doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve our kids. And I think it's sad because a lot of mothers these days aren't, well, you say, we're not given a handbook, but more than anything, I think it's important for parents to know that they are the best parents for their kids that they can possibly be. And they need to be able to trust in their own intuition and that they know more than anything what's best for their kids. But everyone else these days is just, you get so much noise thrown at you. But I think everyone just needs to take a second to breathe and just to, kind of reflect on and look at what they think their kids need. Because I think we know what our kids need more than anything, and we need to learn to trust ourselves, because that is what is important.
I couldn't agree more. And when we look at evidence-based medicine, it's not just the science, it's the practitioners' practice of what they've learnt, as well as the parents' wishes or the patient's wishes. And sometimes I think we forget that's what evidence-based medicine is. And I'm sorry I brought that up, but it is, you're right. A parent usually knows what's happening with their child, and they're telling them, and they've got to listen to that parent or that patient or whoever it is. I think you're an incredible role model. I've always thought that. I remember last year at the summit, your baby was a baby, 3 weeks old, I think. 3 weeks?
I think she was 3 weeks old.
3 weeks. And you were just incredible that whole time. I did steal her quite a few times, but you were incredible. You sat through that whole thing, and that baby was quiet the whole time. And that was through 2 major days. I'm not sure if you came to the farm now. You did, because I had...
You stole her.
I did have your babe.
You got to the point where we were getting on the bus.
Yes, and you had to get on the bus and I was lost.
I was like, where is my child? Cindy's walked off with her.
Exactly. I do remember that now. But you are an inspiration, and I think people need to know. I love your website. I love what you're doing. Thank you for my tote bag. That was just the most special thing. I need to get them done for my grandbabies as well, but that will come in time through one of their presents. But I think people need to know where to find you. Would you like to let our audience know your website and your Instagram? I'm not sure if you do Facebook, but I follow you on Instagram and your website.
Yeah, so my Instagram is @everandwild, EVER and wild, because my kids are my wild and I am forever theirs. That's how I came up with it. And then my website is everandwild.au.
Yes.
And I do have a Facebook, but I'm not very active on it. So,
but sometimes if people are on Facebook, what ends up happening is that you post on Instagram and it goes straight to Facebook. That's what I noticed. So let them know your Facebook page as well.
I think it's facebook.com/everandwild.
Oh, good. It's all the same. Well done, keeping it ever and wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And on behalf of Kim and I, Kim, did you have something else? Sorry.
Oh, I just think you're amazing. And I also wanted to add that you have a shop on your website with all your beautiful artwork. I don't know where you get the time to draw and to do all of these things with 4 children under 6. So I'm just bowing down to you. I just want you to know that. And I think your children are very blessed and lucky to have chosen you and your husband. And I just want to wish you an incredible journey as they age and get older, and just that beautiful knowledge and that wisdom that you're passing on to them. You're equipping them to be resilient. You're equipping them to have perseverance and persistence and to actually know and trust their own bodies, their minds. You're encouraging them to be curious and open-hearted, and you're encouraging them to think outside the square. And I think as a parent, that is one of the greatest gifts we could bestow on our children. So, I just wanted to thank you and acknowledge you as well. And I'm really excited for what's coming up and what's to come with you, beautiful Rebekah Rocca.
And I'd like to put my 2 cents worth in there too. Everybody needs a mentor and someone that inspires them. And I think that you, for young mums, is a wonderful mentor and an amazing inspiration. So for any young mum that's wanting to learn, the way you do things, and it is your story and it is your way of doing things, but more and more mothers, this is happening to, and it's like by example, and that's what you are. You are by example. And then through, what you are doing, you may be able to influence people. And that's where I think you stand. So on behalf of Kim and I, I'd like to thank you for spending this hour with us and sharing your incredible story and your wisdom at such a young age. And I just think we need more of you out there. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. You're going to make me cry. Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me on. I'm so nervous because, this is kind of like, I idolize both of you guys, and this is a little bit of a fangirl moment for me. I was so nervous to sit here and talk to you guys because I just love everything that you do as well.
Oh, thank you. And you did an incredible job.
Thank you.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.